My Lords, I begin by declaring my position as a Vice President of the Local Government Association, and I'm afraid I bring a somewhat different perspective to the earlier speakers on this bill. It reflects the views that I was presenting in much discussion in the Levelling Up Bill. The last thing our local communities, particularly the most disadvantaged, need is more meddling, more statutory requirements laid on them from Westminster without the resources to actually deliver them. Now, as the noble Lord Mayor pointed out, the government is offering money to draw up the plans, but not offering money to actually deliver the plans. Now, it's not, of course, within the power of your Lordship's House to put down an amendment to demand that there also be funding from the centre of your Lordship's House, but were it within our power, I'd be very tempted to lay down such an amendment. And I will direct this comment particularly towards the Labor front bench, that I hope, should they be in the position of actually implementing this bill, that they would look at providing such a provision, financial provision. What we need is Westminster to get out of the road of local communities. We need Westminster to stop sticking its oar in and give people the power and the resources to make decisions locally. If we just take one example of the framework of this bill, we have artificial time periods for review that are set out from here in Westminster. You will review this every 5 years. But it may be that local circumstances are different and the timing, maybe everything's going swimmingly and everyone can see it, or maybe something's going wrong in another area and it's the need to move resources. That's an artificial imposition from Westminster. I also have to note that we are in a situation where what councils overwhelmingly need is a long-term funding settlement. They face a £4 billion gap over the next 2 years to protect their statutory services, to provide what's needed on the high street like cleaning and maintenance. They're under enormous pressure because there simply is not the money, and this is just one more imposition being laid on. Now, I think it's very interesting to think about what the guidance is actually going to say. There's a question of powers, but there's also possibly some ability to use the guidance for an issue that was also raised by the noble Lord Mayor, which was the permitted development rights. Now, your Lordship's House has heard, particularly from two noble lords not currently in their place, Lord Best and Lord Crisp, who've really highlighted the terrible nature of housing that's been developed under permitted development rights. 100,000 dwellings created since 2013. Many lack fire safety standards. They don't have adequate ventilation. They don't have natural light. Housing without natural light. They don't have the facilities like schools and health facilities that are needed. So I wonder if it's the noble lady, the Minister, might be able to say whether it's possible. The government has ruled out giving councils control over this within these zones, but is it possible to put anything in the guidance that might help to address this issue? I also particularly want to focus on the issue of privatisation, because public land ownership in Britain is in crisis. Since the late 1970s, half of all public land, what was public land, has been sold off, 2 million hectares in total. That's 10% of Britain's total land area. So I wonder if the noble lady, the Minister, could comment on whether the government would consider, or indeed the Labor front bench would consider for the future, whether they would make in the guidance a recommendation that there is no further privatisation of public space in these high street plans, because that is something that's absolutely crucial. And it's crucial to our politics, and I'm going to declare an interest here. Because I believe our high street should be a place of political activity, something that privatisation has often led to the exclusion of. And my declaration of interest was I was with Occupy London on day one, when Occupy London was driven out, was not able to occupy what many people think of the public space, a long-term historic political space in London, Paternoster Square. But now, of course, it's owned and managed by the Japanese group Mitsubishi Estate, and they were able to close that square off, and Occupy London ended up in front of St Paul's instead. I hope that we might see some guidance on this. I hope we might also see in the guidance, if the government is going to provide all kinds of prescriptions, to make sure we're protecting small independent businesses against large multinational companies. And finally, just to put on the record, I did really struggle with this, but eventually I've decided that this does, however limited and controlling from Westminster it does provide a little bit more resources to local councils. So it's not my intention to seek to slow the progress of this bill, despite the very deep concern of the Local Government Association and local authorities.